It's the OCGFAM show. Today we're talking about foliar feeding at length. So let's get into it. Hey there, Bob from Oregon. Hey there, Bob from Oregon, Wisconsin Gardener. Welcome to the OCGFAM show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? How's everybody doing? Let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it after the show. Right now, let's just get into the show. And I'm going to be brief because I got a long clip for you today. I probably could have broken this up into 5 or 6 different clips, and I may at some point. But right now, I wanted to do the whole thing. It's about foliar feeding, and Scott and I just had a long-ranging conversation, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes there, about foliar feeding and several different topics. And I wanted to put it all together because it all kind of flows, but also so that we can take a broad look at the topic of foliar feeding and maybe get some questions, comments from y'all for further discussion on the topic. So let's just get into the clip. You foliar feed like that's part of your game. I mean, that is part of your game, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, they love it.
Yeah.
They have bigger mouths in their leaves than they do on their feet.
Okay, that's a good now.
Yeah,
that one down.
So for foliar feeding, I don't know. It really boils down to the time frame, what's going on, what they look like. I always like feeding them kelp because it's got tons of vitamins, growth hormones, very natural, mild potassium load. I love Pegasus because it's that nitrogen protein in veg. Foliar feeding them Athenas gives them the amino acids right in the foliage. So as they're developing new cells, they already have the amino acid blocks there to build the structure. So, I mean, I know the Nectar Bible and the Nectar groups has a handful of really good, helpful foliar feeding tips and recipes that they've come up with the line that they use. I personally stick with, Chaos all by itself, and then like Poseidon and Athena and Pegasus as my go-tos for like healthy veg growth and making things happy. Okay,
I have a few questions. So there are times when you'll do, and we can get into this another time, but there are times reactively when you'll foliar feed to try to fix something or to diagnose something. But all things being equal, you're having a normal grow, everything's good. What would be your foliar feed, and how late into bloom would you do it? Would just until you see some flower? Are you going all the way to that to where you can't foliar feed anymore, or are you going to pull back or change at some point?
I personally don't foliar feed after I see the flower set.
Sure.
So, I mean, I see that it's female, it stacks on a couple more pistils, then that is over for me, I'm done. And only because I've battled mold, I've battled mildew, I've played the game of foliar feeding too late. Frank will foliar feed all the way up until like the day of harvest. Not recommended. Frank also doesn't grow weed for a living, so he's testing some plants to see what he can do to them.
He only grows tomatoes and that one Feed Me Seymour thing out there from what I've seen.
Personal Ford to put on his deck.
Okay.
And he's like, well, I'm still foliar feeding them in the dark bathroom in November. I'm like, you're foliar feeding them in the dark in the bathroom, and then you're going to give them to one of the employees for them to process? Yeah, you know what? Just throw that plant away. That's unusable. So, bless his heart. He's not, it's not his game, but he knows how to grow healthy plants.
Frank's one of those guys where you think he's an idiot until the planet's burning up and you see him flying off in a spaceship.
Yeah, waving at you. Saying, it's about Dogecoin.
Good luck, guys. Thanks a lot. See ya. Thanks for all the fish.
I mean, for foliar feeding, it really is. It comes down to in that bloom cycle. Once I see fruiting, I just stop, and everything that I need to do correctively needs to be done in the root zone or during flushing or whatever.
Okay.
During veg, it just comes down to genetics are such a huge part of this play. Where if they're just leggy plants, I like foliar feeding to help reduce the legs and kind of keep them to be more squatty plants. If I need them to be more leggy plants, I learned how to water that in to make that accelerate the growth up towards the light a little bit faster. So really, foliar feeding is one of those that can be done 3 times a day. It can be done 3 times a week. I mean, you're never going to really be harming the plant by giving it food through or nutrition through the leaves.
Yeah.
The one thing we do tell people, obviously, is calcium is not our friend through the foliage. It will go in, but it's not efficient. So everything else through the foliage is very efficient. Calcium is most efficient in the root zone. So balancing those two work. add one more point to that, and I cannot even think of it.
Well, I have a couple questions. So we foliar feed all the way till you stop because of practical matter of not wanting to get the flowers wet. But do you change up that foliar based on the plant switching over at any point, or is it the same foliar all the way through?
Well, I mean, it's roughly the same. I may make it more or less concentrated and more or less, nitrogen-based. So very young plants, obviously, you're not going to give them 2 teaspoons of Pegasus as a seedling because they're just too small. But if they're this big, I can be at 2 teaspoons a quart and foliar feeding them for aggressive feeding. So it's very similar stuff from the beginning to when I'm going to stop foliar feeding. And then chaos being its own beast.
So more and more concentrated as you go deeper into the process.
Yeah, and as the plants become hardier, bigger, stronger, hungrier, it's the same thing. They eat like that on the top. As long as you're not hitting them with 1,400 parts per million in the foliage, they'll eat it the same way you ramp up your food in your root zone.
Can you overdo the chaos, the bloom chaos, and how often would you do that, and how often, what are your parameters there?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Quarter strength every other day until you learn how to do it full strength every day.
Okay. How do you... Sorry.
No, it's just, chaos is... If I had 12 plants in the room from 12 different breeders and 12 different things, I can't foliar feed all of them chaos the same way because they're all going to... it's like throwing 12 3-year-olds into a pool and see how many make it to the edge.
That would be a good show.
For a while until you go to prison.
Oh, no. We're going to have we're going to have divers. We're going to have rescue divers.
Sure.
So when they...
life jackets
So how do I fit in that bloom chaos foliar feeding with my other foliar feed?
Well, the nice thing about regular foliar feeding, you can do it daily. No problem.
Okay.
Chaos, you can do it daily if you've conditioned them and they're working to it and they want it. So if you're just introducing chaos, let's say you do it every other day or every third day, well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can foliar feed Poseidon and Athena. Monday and Thursday, you're going to do chaos. So you do chaos, go through in the morning, spray everybody with chaos, come back a half hour later when the leaves are dry, and foliar feed them the rest of the stuff you want to do.
Okay.
Just wait for them to dry up because then you know they've absorbed it, they've evaporated it, and then you can react it with another food.
What exactly would be your base foliar recipe, product names, and how much of each one in 32 ounces of water?
For what?
So I got a sprayer of water. I'm going to mix up my things in there. Your basic go-to foliar. Which actual products would it be, and how much would you put in there?
5 mils of Athena, 1 teaspoon of Athena per quart.
Okay.
5 mils of Poseidon or liquid kelp per quart. Maybe a half a teaspoon, 2.5 mils of Zeus.
Okay.
That would be one really good foliar feed.
Okay.
If I feel like they need more nitrogen, they're not greening the way I want, in a bottle I'd use 5 mils of Pegasus per quart, 5 mils of Athenas per quart, maybe a couple drops of Zeus just for penetration. That would be my fixing an issue with nitrogen being too low. The other one would be just a general purpose blanket food, if you will. If you wanted to add a little Medusa, 1 to 2 mils of Medusa in that quart of the Athena and the Poseidon would just give you more of a broad spectrum food. But those are my go-tos: is Athena, Pegasus, Poseidon, and Chaos.
The Chaos separately from the others.
Separately, in its own bottle.
And better safe than sorry with that quarter strength until you start to see a pattern, and go slow all the way through if you don't figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, and really, that's what it boils down to. Is you can always add stuff, but once you give it, you can't take it back. So if you just want to go full throttle and don't think you're going to hit a wall because the motorcycle left your arms and smashed into a tree, go ahead, floor it, see what happens. But it never works out. So giving it the gas and giving it going until you get everything going well, and then you start ramping things up and then pushing the plants at that point. But don't push them out of the gate because it doesn't work.
Yeah. So in a normal circumstance, would I do any pHing of this mixture? And what if I had some weird high or weird low pH water?
Well, foliar feeding, you definitely want to be acidic in the sense of 7.0 or less. So 7.0 is neutral. Anything above that is high pH or alkaline, and anything below that would be acidic. So ideally, a pH range of the 6.1 to 6.4 is ideal for foliar feeding. Anything from 5.7 to 6.4 is acceptable because it's still penetrating the actual foliage to make that absorption rate happen. If you have naturally high pH water, then it'd be recommended to actually have some carbonated water.
Okay.
Because the carbonated water will drop that high pH down into the mid-6s. The rest of the food's going to keep that pH down because you're not adding Olympus up to it, so you're never really bringing it back up. If you have to bring it up, you want to really be careful. I would try bringing it up with Zeus first because it's a humic acid, not an Olympus up, which is limestone, pure calcium. So the plants aren't going to really utilize that calcium from it, but you can pH correct with it.
So the recipe...
You're fine.
The recipe you're talking about would generally bring down pH a little more so than bring it up.
Yeah. And try to be in the 6 to 6.4 range for foliar feeding.
And overdoing the Zeus can be a problem? Because of the
on your pocketbook, I mean, it's expensive.
But the pH, it's not going to radically change the pH even.
No, it brings it up. If anything, Zeus is the only thing that has like a 9 pH in the bottle.
Yeah,
so everything else is like below 5. That one's 9. So generally, it'll take you up a little bit, but not enough. Not like pH up.
It's not the same. It'll trending that way, but it's not made to do that. It will not just bring it up.
If you added a tablespoon to a quart, you wouldn't go from 5 to 7 like Olympus up.
You'll go up a little no matter how much you do.
Yeah, you go 5 to 5.4 maybe, but
okay.
And it would just be a waste of Zeus at that point.
Sure. Okay, what do you think of that? Informative, entertaining, helpful? Did it bring up any questions, any comments? What do you do about foliar feeding? What do you want to know about foliar feeding? What can we learn about foliar feeding together? Let's get into that as we go forward. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you tomorrow.